This is Polish Peter, and welcome back to episode 92 of Immigrant Masters Unite. Hey, do you have equity in the house and you don't know how to actually be able to use it without going to the bank, without actually going through all the hoops and everything that typically you have to do in order to get to your equity? If this is something that you're going through right now, I then encourage you to listen to this particular episode, because on today's episode of Immigrant Masters Unite, I have a guest. His name is Matthew Sullivan. He's originally from UK, so you're going to love his accent, first of all, right? But Matthew is a founder and CEO of QuantumRE, which is a company that solves a real problem from homeowners by helping them actually access portion of their home equity without taking on more debt. And they actually can use that equity for whatever that they need, like, credit cards and whatever they need to pay off, right? So this is a new financing tool that is not a HELOC, it's not a loan, it's not a reverse mortgage, and that actually means that homeowners can get that cash from their equity with no interest and no monthly payments. Now, this sounds pretty freaking exciting, maybe sound too good to be true, but I want to encourage you to listen to this episode, because not only do we talk about this company, we actually talk about coming to United States from UK and the culture shift that happens from one central big culture versus 50 different little cultures. If you really think about United States, got 50 different states, so there's 50 different cultures. And we also talked about how to keep moving when things seems to be maybe impossible, how to make impossible, right? We talked about how to go after what you're trying to accomplish, how to actually start that company and make it a reality. And that's one of the cool things that Matthew was able to share with us on this particular episode, because he has been through life and started several different companies, not only here in the United States, but he founded the company in Australia and India. So he has a lot of experience with starting businesses and a lot of experience with starting business in different environments, different cultures. So we talked a little bit about that. I want to encourage you to listen till the end, because at the end of this episode, I asked him a question about telling him what would he say to his 20-year self. And I think this is one of those answers that has profound impact on some people to be able to go and actually be successful in life, right? Think about it this way. When you, whatever age you are, if you're past 20 years old, if you could go back in time, what would you say to your 20-year-old self that would help you tremendously in life? So this was a great answer, and I would encourage you to listen to this episode. So I don't want to waste any more time, because Matthew was really on a mission to help homeowners here. And let's dig into it and find out what this is all about. So without further ado, here is Matthew Sullivan from UK. So, hey, Matthew, thank you so much for being on the episodes of Immigrant Masters Unite.
Thank you, Peter, for having me on. It's my pleasure.
Well, you're welcome, man. I always love getting together with some amazing immigrants. And from our connection with you, it sounds to me like you are one of those immigrants. So before I go into the actual content, share a little bit of your story of how you got here into the United States from UK.
Well, I came here about 7 years ago, and it was a bit of a sort of circuitous journey. I never imagined up in the United States. So, I'm a Brit, through and through, but through, sort of circumstances, I just, I met someone who ended up being my wife. Well, don't tell her that, though.
That's one good reason.
And so I sort of followed this person, across, large amounts of water. And I think I got more air miles in a couple of months than, I could theoretically travel around the world 17 times, I think, with the amount of traveling I did. But no, that was the beginning. But it was very much at a moment in my life where things were changing. And this presented this sort of enormous, exciting opportunity where everything was new. And it was a completely blank canvas, both from a personal and from a business perspective. But with that comes challenges. In other words, if you're going to come to a foreign country with the joyous benefits of a blank canvas, you also have the challenges of, well, what do you actually, where do you start? What are you going to paint? What are you going to do? So that's where you really have to sort of dig deep, and that's where the fun really begins, because as I'm sure many people realize, really anything is possible, and I think it's far more possible here than many other places where I've tried to do business. That and I've set up companies in Australia and India and the United Kingdom and other places. So this by far has been the most interesting ride.
All right, so that's one really good reason to come to the United States, right? Is wife. So that's
yes,
tells you how dedicated you are to fly across the ocean to be able to be here. But you mentioned something during your share that I think is really important for us to talk about. Is one, anything is possible. I think that is something that some people are dealing with. And the second thing is, you talked about you started companies in other countries. So obviously you have an entrepreneurial mindset. You're an entrepreneurial kind of a person. What is it like for you to start a company in different countries? I mean, there are some barriers or culture. What do you deal with, coming into the United States like that?
I mean, culturally, the two sort of countries that I've worked in where sort of every culture is different, again, and that's not really me dodging the question. So if you think about setting up a company in India, this was 15 years ago, and that was a company that was working in the business process outsourcing space, so call centers, and one of the companies that we tried to set up. We never actually ended up doing it, but it was a telecommunications company that provided international telecommunications pipes, effectively, or communications or connections between India and other countries. So the one thing from a cultural perspective in India is it's a very slow manual process to get things done. There are many layers of bureaucracy, and I don't think that's something that I've seen in other countries. It's just it's a very different way of doing business, and everything is very much relationship based. We had another company in Australia, which was a company which was an environmental business, where the objective was to grow several million Mallee eucalypt, which is a particular type of tree that grows rather fast. But we were in the process of effectively reforesting some of the areas around Melbourne in particular that had been sort of devastated by deforestation. Now, the reason we were doing that is because there were a number of carbon credits. There was a strong financial incentive to do that. But again, doing business in Australia, it's very interesting, very regulated. The business that we were involved with, which was carbon trading, was a very regulated business. It was regulated by the Australian Financial Services Commission. And ultimately, the business couldn't go ahead because there was a change of government. So all of the regulations and legislation that had been created to support this type of endeavor overnight sort of disappeared.
Right.
So I think each country has really very, and even doing business in the US, is very regionalized, state to state. It's still very much sort of mano a mano, as it were. So even though there's an enormous amount of technology, and there's still, tons of, development and innovation, there's still very much an old-fashioned sort of, business is done. A lot of businesses is done on a handshake, which again is very different to the UK, where I think it's much more, can be done at a distance.
Okay, gotcha. So was there any kind of a cultural shock for you to come here, or?
No, there's no culture shock. I mean, I've been around. I've traveled in many countries, and so there's never a concept of culture shock. There are challenges in terms of you find that things are done in a way that you wouldn't quite expect them to be done. In other words, just things, the way that companies are set up, the way that taxation happens, the way that, the way that intrastate and interstate business is done in the United States. It's just very different because coming from the UK, when it was part of Europe, that was very much a homogenized, single sort of end-to-end transaction, no matter where you did business in Europe. So my expectation coming to the US, well, it's going to be the same, isn't it? Well, when you land in one state, it's going to be the same as the other states. And that's really where the education began, I think.
Right. I got you. Yeah. I mean, even when I came here and I started doing my entrepreneurial back in the early 2000s, I mean, what they teach you in school and what actually is happening out in the real world are two different things. So just that one aspect of it made a huge difference. When you get out there and start doing things, you start experiencing life in a completely different way as far as business goes. So let me ask you this, because I know your company that you have is kind of an innovative company. It's something different that you don't normally see, right? So I imagine there is a lot of different regulations because you are in the real estate aspect, right? So there's regulations, yes. There is different things that you have to overcome. So tell us a little bit about your company, of what exactly that is and how does it work. And then let's talk about how you talk about anything's possible, how you get through those challenges, how you grow the company.
Well, I think the business itself is QuantumRE. So this is a business that we set up 3 years ago. And what we do is we help homeowners unlock equity in their homes without having to borrow money. Now, this is a very big problem, not just in the United States, but around the world. But in the United States, there's over $18 trillion of equity in residential homes. There's over 15 million homeowners who have over 50% equity. And in all of those cases, the only way that they can unlock that equity is to go to the bank, borrow money, either through some sort of cash out refi or a mortgage or a home equity line of credit. So effectively what that means is, even though you have this asset, what you're doing is you're going deeper into debt to try and realize some of the liquidity that's locked up in the equity in your homes. So we solve that problem through an agreement called a home equity agreement or a home equity investment. And we work with a number of investors that buy into the potential appreciation of your home rather than being paid by charging you interest. So that means it's not a debt product. So that means if you have a very low credit score, or you have low income, or you cannot prove your income, or you have a number of other challenges that would prevent you from borrowing money, or if you simply don't want to take on more debt, then we're able to unlock hundreds of thousands of dollars for you based on the equity in your home. So that is a real solution for homeowners who either don't want to go into debt or cannot borrow more money. And it also provides, and particularly right now when people have a real need for cash and they're under increasing pressure because of the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, this is a real solution that's really coming into its own. And so, that's something that, as you rightly say, we touch on, real estate regulations, securities regulations, because we have, a capital element, we have an investment element. So, we are working with a number of different areas to deliver this product. But it's something that we are very, very excited about in terms of the scalability, but also in terms of the positive impact that it has on people that need to raise money.
Great. I love that explanation. So can you give us an example, like a typical household example, how that would work?
Well, I mean, we're working, I'll give you an extreme example. So we're working with someone who has a house that they own up in the Bay Area of San Francisco. They own the home free and clear. So it's a home that they've had for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem is that the owner has found it very difficult to continue because even though they own this sort of $1 million+ asset, which is the home, because of COVID, they've lost their job and they've their credit score has fallen down in sort of 400s. So no traditional financial institution is prepared to offer them any type of lifeline. So this person is sitting on $1 million plus of prime real estate. So we're working with that person to unlock $100 and something thousand purely based on the equity. So they would get that capital with no monthly payments, with no added debt. In this situation, they would have 10 years to either buy back or settle the agreement. In some cases, in fact, in most cases, these agreements last for 30 years. So we work with all different types of people that want to diversify out of their home equity and invest in different types of investments like stocks and bonds so that all their money is not trapped in one space, to the other end of the spectrum where people are really challenged financially because of credit card debt. And we all know how easy it is to let those credit cards run away with us, and how difficult it is to sort of rein them back.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a solution for very much for both ends of the spectrum.
Gotcha. So in that case, does the homeowner still own the house?
The homeowner owns the house. There's no change of title. We don't change. We don't go on title. We're not homeowners. We don't have any rights as an owner. We're not going to come and camp in your spare bedroom. You own the house. And what happens is it's an option agreement that sits attached to your title as a lien on title, but it sits there in the background. Nothing happens until you decide to sell your home or you decide to refinance or buy back the agreement. And then we simply calculated how much your house has gone up in value since the time you took out the agreement. And then we get our original investment back together with a share of that increase. Now, if your house has gone down in value, if it's collapsed in value, we run the risk of actually losing money. So it is very much a shared transaction in terms of risk.
Okay, gotcha. So they're both parties have some kind of a, I'll call it a, no, you guys have some, I can't believe I'm lost for words right now.
No. So I think there's that expression that I never really liked, which is skin in the game, which sounds rather painful. But both sides have a risk, in other words. So therefore, it is a partnership. Unlike a bank, the bank doesn't have any risk. Well, they do have some risk, I suppose, if the asset collapses in value. But the risk of a loan attached to real estate where there's a ton of equity is really low for a lender. But for us, it's a different type of risk profile. So it's much more of a partnership than a traditional loan. But the most important thing for the homeowner is they get capital, they get cash, and they don't have to worry about monthly payments. They don't have to worry about missing a payment and having the bank foreclose. They can use the money to pay off credit cards, pay off their mortgage, remodel their kitchens, send their kids to college, invest in stocks and bonds or that new entrepreneurial idea. So, it's a really interesting, exciting, and timely financial instrument that's been developed over the last 10 years and is really now reaching its getting into its full stride.
Okay, so that's been around for 10 years, you say?
Yeah, I mean, and these types of instruments, home equity agreements or shared equity agreements, have been around for over a decade. But it's just really in the last 2 to 3 years that they've got that sort of momentum that's bringing them into the biggest challenge. Is education, is getting across to people how these work, why we can provide them with capital without monthly payments, why it's not a loan, why it's not a reverse mortgage, it's not something dressed up as something else. It is a completely different way. In the same, these types of agreements have been around for decades for commercial property transactions. So all we're really doing is bringing commercial property sort of methodology to the residential home.
I love that. How did you come up with that idea?
Well, you'll be pleased to hear that it wasn't my idea. So therefore, what we did is we came across this, I stumbled across this about 5 years ago when it was in its very early stages, and saw it as a really interesting and exciting development because of the scalability, because of the huge numbers of people that this would affect. The challenge then was, funders and investors really were like hen's teeth in terms of this respect. They didn't understand it. They weren't interested because there's no monthly cash pay. There's no interest payment. There's no rent. So finding investors that were excited about this was very difficult because all of the things that they wanted, we couldn't deliver with this product. In other words, monthly cash pays and liquidity, and these are much longer term agreements. But then over time, the endowment funds and longer term hedge funds and pension funds and other companies in this space really began to get momentum because of their access to capital. So, even though 5 years ago it was really interesting, it was still very niche. Now, it's becoming much more mainstream because of the efforts and success of all of the companies in this space.
I gotcha. All right, awesome. So listen, sounds to me like you guys had a lot of roadblocks that you had to get through to get to where you're at right now, right? Some of them were like with investors, some of them were probably with, regulations and things like that. As far as a business owner or, immigrant or listening to this podcast, when you come across some kind of a roadblock, because in business, there will be the roadblocks that are going to show up. What would you tell that person? How you get through this? How you get around it? How you deal with it?
Well, my approach as someone coming to the United States from the UK is that I don't know what the roadblocks are. So I don't have a preconceived idea that this cannot work. If I was to try and do this in the UK, then immediately you think, well, I know about this law, I know about that law, so it's going to be difficult. Over here, you say, well, I don't really understand what the laws and regulations are yet. I know that this is a good idea. I know that from a business perspective, there's a huge demand. It solves a real problem. It's scalable. Every person makes money. It's a win-win for both deals. So from a business perspective, this should work. Now, how do we go about making that work? So the perception, therefore, or the approach is not so much there are roadblocks, because there are no roadblocks. There is a pathway that you need to take, which involves negotiating regulation, structure, and other sort of processes to be able to reach your objective. So the objective has always remained the same, which is to deliver this product to as many people that qualify as possible in a regulated and compliant way. And really, there are, if you take that approach, then you say, well, what do we need to do to become compliant? What do we need to do to meet the regulatory requirements? The intention has never been to ride roughshod or to play fast and loose with the regulators. And I think a number of people that have tried that approach will always fall flat on their face. So our approach has always been, how do we do this step by step? And so therefore, the concept of a roadblock never really comes into it. There are regulatory challenges or there are business challenges, which every business comes across. But if you always work on the basis that you completely believe in the product, then you know that this will happen, and it is purely a matter of when as opposed to a matter of if.
Hey guys, so it's Polish Peter, and we're going to dive right back into this particular episode. But before we do that, I want to offer you something for free. No obligation. I know it might sound too good to be true. However, it isn't, because a lot of the people who have taken advantage of it, they've discovered for themselves that is not something that is too good to be true. And what I mean by that is oneconversationaway.com. Have you ever had a conversation with someone that has a profound impact on you, that maybe shifted how you're viewing life, how you're doing life, how you are taking on business, or whatever it might be? What if I could provide you with that conversation? Because I believe that every person here on earth sometimes it could be just one conversation away from living that life that they want. Maybe that conversation for you was a long time ago. Maybe you never had one. Either way, I want to offer you that conversation. I have the ability to be able to dig down deeper into people's psyches, into people's whys, and figuring out their limiting beliefs and things like that. So I want to offer that to you for free, no obligation, at oneconversationaway.com. Why would I want to do that? It's because I believe that if I give back to you, when I give you something of value that's going to have an impact on you, maybe you'll want to have more conversations with me. And that will mean that maybe you become my student in the near future. But that will have to be a great fit for both of us. So there is no pressure or anything like that. I just want to give that conversation away from you and expand my horizons, right? If I get to impact more people, maybe you'll tell somebody else about me. Maybe share it, how they could have a great conversation with me. So, like I said, no obligation, oneconversationaway.com, because I believe that every single one of us is just one conversation away from living the life that we truly want and deserve. So, without further ado, let's get back into this episode, and I'll see you on the inside. Yeah, I got that. Listen, and one thing that you said really important, I think, is for the listeners, is that you said coming here from the UK to the United States, you didn't have any preconceived notions of how things should be going, right? So
I do. Well, yes. I mean, that's not entirely. I mean, that's a bit of a a glib statement. So yes. I mean, obviously, having come from a 20+ year, entrepreneurial background, I have a lot of experience in setting companies up. So I've got a pretty good idea what I'm up against. But over here, because all I saw when I came over here was, opportunity, and the fact that I wanted to build something and wanted to make something happen. So I didn't have anything holding me back, because all I would ever think of was, how do I build this? How do I make it happen? How do I grow it? I don't want a comfortable existence, because I didn't have anything here to fall back on. Right. I didn't have decades of, sort of stuff like, I'm in my sort of early 50s. If you, sorry, I'm lying to myself, mid 50s. If you get to this point, you've probably had a long career. You've got your equity in your home. You've got your pension, and so I sort of gave all that up. When I moved over here, I sort of, that was part of the sort of settlement. So because of that, I didn't really have any expectation that I would run for a little period of time and then sort of sit back on my laurels.
Right. So do you think that's an advantage for like an immigrant or someone who doesn't have those kinds of expectations to be able to start a business and run a business?
Yeah, completely. It is, because I think it makes you much more open, because you don't assume it can't be done. You just ask, well, how can it be done? Or how do I do it? Or who do I speak to? Who do you know that can show me the pathway? And it's not this sort of driven, irritating, sort of a pain in the arse approach. It is curiosity. I really want to make this happen. How do we do it? You must know someone. There must be a way. This is America, after all. And what we're trying to do is something that's good, that's beneficial, that affects positively, lots of people. And again, I think if I was to do this in the UK, I think I would come up against so much so many preconceptions that I have based on my experience in the UK. This literally just enables me just to wake up every morning and still have that same motivation that I had from day one, to think, today's a new day, anything is possible. So it is that sort of daily rebirth that you don't get if you build this in your well, you probably do get it, but it's just a different feeling.
Why do you think you still have that daily rebirth right now as you're going this company?
I think you've got to work on it. I mean, you have to you just mustn't allow yourself to think, oh, God, here we go, another day in paradise. A lot of it is really that you have to wake up and say, today is another day. I have to do something, achieve something, check the box at the end of the day that I've actually done something that has moved me forwards, no matter how much or how little. And so, the day starts with, thank God for dogs, so I take the dog for a walk. And the dog is a great excuse, even though it's like 25 degrees here, which apparently is quite chilly. It just means you put more layers on. But it's great, so you have to have it. You can't start the day thinking, oh God, it's another day. You've got to think, I'm surrounded by, mountains and snow. I'm in just outside of Salt Lake City. We were in Southern California, but we moved here a few months ago, and it's beautiful here. The air is clear, fresh. And so, every day, and it's not trite. In other words, it's not one of these, oh God, you're such a boring sort of, evangelist, but you have to do it, because otherwise, the difference between having a good day and having a bad day is so thin, in terms of it is tied down to your attitude. And if you don't want to do it, then, you can write off that day very quickly.
Yeah. Sounds to me like you have some form of a morning routine then.
Yeah, just get out, breathe, exercise, do something. I used to get up and sort of sit in the office and start, work immediately, which is, it's not actually it's not very good. It's not very healthy. It's not very productive. And it always reminds me of, do you remember, when you go on holiday, like the day before you go on holiday is your most productive day ever, because you managed to cram a week's work of productivity into 4 hours because you've got to go away on holiday.
Right.
And then the rest of the week, when you come back, you manage to do 4 hours work over a week. You sort of stretch it out. It's like, the work sort of stretches out to fill the time available. So there is this, time is relative, as we know. And so this sort of concept of, I don't need to spend my entire day glued to my screen. I can be very productive if I do it in short bursts. And why not, go and refresh myself? Because as you walk around the place, there's this Latin expression, which is cogito ambulans. I think when I walk, and the pacing and the walking, and it does help you sort of slot rattle all the things into the right place. And doing that every morning is, for me, is really, helpful, not critical, but it's just useful. It's a useful way of starting the morning afresh.
Yeah,
particularly with COVID. I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying, with COVID, where there are no offices to go to, so the ability to go out and have a walk is, one must be grateful for small blessings.
Right, exactly. I truly believe that. I mean, all my students, when I coach my students, and one of the things that I have discussions with them is looking at the morning routine. I mean, I think it's important to have something outside of your office, outside of your norm, outside of the work that you do, to be able to have your mind be, refreshed, or look at some other way, or even actually have the space to yourself. Right? Just be with yourself for a little bit to be able to go and get ideas, go and think, and go and enjoy whatever is going out there. And that, I think, allows you to actually be a lot more productive when you actually get to the office.
It is, because the problem is what a lot of the time what you do is you end up using your mind as some sort of storage device, where you're trying to, all the things you've got to do, you try and remember those, which leaves absolutely no space for creativity. So the thing to do is to decant, like a fine wine, all of your stuff that you have to do onto a piece of paper or a book or some sort of, app. So that your mind then becomes free of all the clutter, and then you can then start thinking creatively about what you can do. It is exciting because every morning I can think, what can I do today? It's entirely in my domain. It's in my ability to completely change the way that I do business today. I can do something completely different. I can throw this away. I can start this. the only way I can do that is if I don't have my mind full of all the people I've got to phone or all the things I've got to do. So if I know that I've written all that stuff down and put it in a safe place, I know where that is. I just don't have to worry about that. Then I can think creatively. And that's where the sort of daily renewal comes in.
Right. Exactly. I got to kind of jump off a little bit to another question. I mean, have you had experience in business for many years? Like you said, you're in mid-50s, so you've been entrepreneur for many years. If you were to go back, let's say to your 20-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Buy Google shares. Yes.
Right.
No,
okay.
I think really, it's funny actually. I think as you get older, you go through these sort of thought exercises. What would I have done? Which is I'm not sure if that's a good idea. Actually, it always ends in tears. But I think really just sticking at something, find something that you like, and just stick at it. In other words, don't try and find the thing that is, this concept of the grass is greener on the other side. Just become, find something that you love doing, and then just get better at it and own the space, and just dedicate your life to doing that, whatever it is, as long as every day when you wake up, you like doing that thing. And the more you do it, the better you become. And then all the people that are trying to be good as you, over time, they fall away. And then you become the true expert in the space. It becomes you become it. So there are a number of things that, I had a great telecoms business, 15 something years ago that I sold. And I think, well, I should have kept that because I was good at it. It was growing. But, it's very tempting when someone dangles a check. You think, well, I have a bit of fun, do something else. But after a while, just doing new things is great fun. But there comes a point when you want to build something. You want to build something that has its own life, that has its own momentum. So I would say, as I said, find something and just stick at it and go through the challenges and the hardships of being dedicated to one task, as long as it's something that you really like doing and you know that it's going to be there for you in terms of, so in other words, don't try selling, extracting moonbeams from cucumbers, because there's probably not very much demand for that. But, find a decent business and then just, allow it to grow with you.
I love that. That's a great piece of advice, because I think when you have that, it's a lot easier to go and do it every day, right? And deal with challenges or dealing any kind of stuff that you have to be able to go to the next level and get it to the next level, right? And
exactly.
When you have that
you
passion,
become good at it.
Yeah.
And the passion grows the better you become at it. It's like anything. The more you ride your bike, the better you become. The more you skate, the better you become. The more you enjoy it. It's playing a musical instrument. The
Right.
more the more expert you become, the more fulfilled you become.
Exactly. Do you believe you have that with that company right now?
I think with this is really exciting because I can see this growing. This is something that really seems like it's the combination of everything that I've been doing up to now has been useful to get me to this business. And I see this business as the one. So this is the one for me. I'm a bit of a late starter, sadly, but this is the one for me that I want to grow and build, because it has such an impact. It does everything that I could ever possibly want a business to do for me.
I got you. Why this business? Like, what's the reason why you're doing this particular business? Is there a reason for that?
It's probably a combination of all the things I went through, when I was younger, trying to raise money, being stuck with equity in your home and having no money in the bank. Working with banks, working with financial institutions, but having a degree of independence, being able to create financial products where the scale of it could be something similar to the scale of mortgages in terms of, so, it's really exciting to work in a space that is so large, that is populated by so many key players, where you are a contributing player, creating something that will outlive you. So I believe that, this type of product will be far bigger, in a few years than it is today, and will be there long after I'm, the wrong side of the soil.
Right. So is there some legacy part to it?
I don't think so. Um, yeah, I think everyone wants to leave something behind. It's not a legacy because, again, legacy can be a word that it makes you sort of going completely the wrong direction, because a legacy can be a very sort of self-opinionated or you don't, many times one doesn't do a legacy thing for other people. You do it to just to try and satisfy your own ego. It's interesting for me. It's something that drives me every day. If it's there and it grows afterwards, that's great, because it means that I've done something that actually outlives me. It's not a legacy thing, because there are lots of other things I can do that have much more of an immediate impact, for my family. So in other words, that's more important to me than, complete strangers that I've never met.
Right. I got you. All right. So listen, I want to make sure that I respect your time. So I want to go into my Polish pillars final. What's that?
I know. So this is great fun. I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, I love talking about business, because the fact is, I mean, we all start these businesses for a reason, right? And when we are actually passionate about it, it makes it so much easier. I mean, what I get to do, how I look at my business, I get to do this. I'm like sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm like this little Polish kid who was living in a 14 by 14 room, right, during the communist era Poland. Now he's here in the United States, right? And he is coaching, and he's got a successful company, and he's impacting lives. I mean, who would have thunk, right?
Yes.
And if you look at your life as you go along, right? I mean, for me, this little kid in there was a village, right? Now I'm here, how this journey has evolved, and everything that has happened over the course of my life for me to be able to get here. I look at it like there's got to be a reason, right? There's got to be a reason for being able to do this and help others. So I love the fact that sounds to me like you have something similar to that effect when it comes to, creating this company and having the passion and helping the people with their, homeowners. There is a lot of stuff that's going on right now with COVID.
Yes.
That a lot of homeowners are dealing with on every single day, and they're looking for someone to help them, to lead them, to help them get better life. Right.
It's good, but also to be honest, it is quite self-serving as well, because it is nice to be able to speak to someone and to be able to help them, so it does, I benefit from this as well. So don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah.
This is not something that's, so it's not it's a two-way street. So in other words, if we can do something where we make money and the homeowner gets what they want and they're happy and the investors are happy, then that's great. And I will do that all day long. And so that's that sense of fulfillment, that you're actually doing something that is actually interesting and useful to someone outside of the four walls of your home. And so there's, it is beneficial. It is good. It's not, none of us are saints in this business. We know we're not doing it for the greater good of humanity, but we all benefit. And so because of that, it makes you feel like something positive and good has happened, which means that you've sort of, you get to stay another day. You can come back and try again tomorrow.
All right, I got you. So listen, let's go into the Polish Pillars final round. So my first question is, one book that you would want to recommend to the listeper, that maybe had an impact on you, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, the really interesting, it's a book and a guide. So I read this book a couple of years ago called Never Split the Difference by an ex-FBI negotiator, Chris Voss. Now, I met Chris a few times because I was part of this networking group in Los Angeles called Metal. And Chris, has this sort of, steely, stare, which, can, evaporate people at 1,000 yards. But the great thing is just to listen to, the book is great, but also listen to some of the speeches that he does and some of the talks he does to people at Google and Microsoft, and just explaining how some of the tricks and tips that they learned as part of their FBI negotiation training can be used. And some of it is just jaw-dropping in terms of its simplicity. For example, if you phone someone up, the temptation is to say, is this a good time to call? And then the other person will say, oh, actually, no, it's not, because, I've got to watch some TV, or I have my hair to wash or something. But if you change it and say, Peter, is this a bad time? People naturally say, no, it's fine. No. Yeah. So just literally just changing that to one saying, is this a good time to call? To say, is this a terrible time to call? I'm so sorry. Then people say, no, it's fine. Look, I've got a few minutes.
Yeah.
So, and it's just that simple things, because we spend our time doing things, one way for one reason. So that's why he and the book are so interesting, because, there's all sorts of simple things that you can put to work that have a real impact.
Yeah, I've read that book myself. It's probably one of the best books ever written on negotiation and just being able to communicate with people. I mean, there's so many.
It is just it's the little nuggets, it's the stuff, it's the, and you get something out of it. So it's worth the $10 you spend or whatever it is.
Exactly. Right. Next question I have for you. For immigrant listeners that come into this country, or maybe they're thinking about starting a business and whatever it might be, what one last piece of advice would you give them?
Just make sure it's a proper business. So, get the priorities in the right order. If you're coming here to run a business or to set up a business, make sure the business is a good business. Because if it's a bad business, it will fail. If it's a bad idea or a crazy idea, it will fail. If you don't do your research, if you don't do your business planning, it doesn't matter if it's, Silicon Valley or New York or whatever, your business won't work. So just because you're coming to the United States doesn't mean to say that, the land of opportunity will provide you with an open ticket to success. It will, assist you. It will turbocharge and supercharge your efforts. There are an enormous number of opportunities here, but fundamentally the business that you're bringing or you're trying to do has to be a decent business.
Right. And I think when people are looking to start a business or anything, even when they already have a business, they want to start marketing. One thing that gets so overlooked all the time is the research. The first part that, researching whether this is a good idea, the audience, the people that you're trying to reach, the problem that you're looking to solve. Does this actually work? Is this going to be good? Is it going to be beneficial? And I think that's one of the biggest reasons a lot of people overlook, because they want to just jump into it, right?
Yeah, I mean, just because, particularly, for English speaking, as an English speaking nation, just because we all speak the same language doesn't mean we all think the same way. So
exactly,
you talk about culture shock. There are huge cultural differences between, the UK, Europe, and the United States. It's not a cultural chasm. There are just differences. So, if you're doing anything in the United States, take the time, as you say, to understand your marketplace and not assume just because we speak the same language, we think the same way.
Right. What's some of the biggest cultural differences between UK and US, you think?
I think the fact that the US is a really almost like 50 different countries. The UK is a much smaller place. People tend to think the same north, south, east, and west. There are commonalities. In the United States, you've got 50 different ways of thinking, 50 different ways of doing things, 50 different layers of regulation and laws and history. So the United States as a whole at a federal level is one thing, but you're doing business at a state by state or a city by city level. So the differences are the fact it's actually not one country, it's 50 different countries.
Yeah. And I think in UK, you guys are still say, how do you do? Do you guys do that?
We do indeed, yes. Yeah. How do you do? Yes.
You know what's funny about that, Matthew, is that when I was, right before I came here, because I was living with my aunt in Poland, because my mom was already here in the United States. So I think they knew that I was going to come here. So they sent me about a month before to school, 1 hour a week, to this lady to learn how to speak English, right? And she was teaching me out of the book. And one thing I do remember, she was telling me, when I go to United States, what I have to say is, how do you do? Now, I come to United States, nobody ever says this. It's a UK, kind of a thing. So How do you do? That's one of those strange things that I was experiencing.
Yeah, but perhaps she should have got the latest edition of the book,
Right.
which is,
She probably got the UK version.
yeah.
My next question is, one thing that you would want to share about the old country, UK. Maybe it's a food, maybe it's a place, custom saying, anything. People.
Bacon and sausages. I mean, there's one place,
What?
In the whole of the United States where I can get proper back bacon. So I am very disappointed about particularly having moved from California to Utah. Still, I am unable to buy, the bacon and the sausages that I miss so terribly. Although it's not, it's that's an entirely separate podcast.
Maybe you should have started on that. That's good.
I know it's tempting. I know that there's an enormous need, but it's one cannot underestimate the importance of proper bacon and proper sausages. Only the English amongst us, and I'm not even going to begin to talk about pork pies.
Pork pies.
Pork pies. You can get hen's teeth more easily than you can buy pork pies.
What is a pork pie?
A pork pie is a food that was invented by the gods several thousand years ago. It's a small pie. It's like a chicken pot pie or something, but it's got pork and.
Gotcha.
I'll send you a link. It's too difficult. It's just trying to describe, perfection.
Gotcha.
So it's these are the things, but that's sacrifice for you. There you are.
That is sacrifice. Yeah, I hear you, man. Yeah, one of the things that I've experienced it. There was few places here in Metro Detroit where it's like a Polish restaurant, right? Where it's real Polish food.
Yes.
Where like old ladies are cooking in the kitchen. Polish ladies are cooking.
I found a good fish and chip shop just up the road. So that was, that did, give me a real sense of purpose and well-being, I can tell you. So that's, right. That's a start.
Another reason to stay here.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Very cool. All right. Next question. I believe that every single person in the world has a superpower. What's yours?
I think, naturally one wants to be rather sort of humble about this and say, I don't know what you're talking about. But I think I probably figured out that the thing I'm probably best at is synthesis. In other words, bringing things together and making something out of them. So different ingredients, different parts, different businesses, different ideas. I'm not a great inventor. I don't come up with stuff. If I can just bring ideas together and make something out of that and create something new from other people's stuff. So it's not, I don't think it's a superpower, but it's what's kept me, my head above water for the last 50 something years, is the ability just to see things that people can't see or don't see in terms of opportunities or, just the ability to have a different view on things and to be able to create something out of that.
That's very
Is that sufficiently vague for you?
No, but I get the sense where you're going with this because of the fact that, the companies that you've created, I think that's where that superpower comes into play. Even this company that you just described here. So leads me to another question for you is, I think what you're talking about here when it comes to this company, how you guys are helping the homeowners and, using the equity in their household without actually going through the banks and all that kind of stuff, I think is really cool. It's very important.
Thank you.
And especially during this COVID times. So if someone would want to find out more about this or maybe even do something with you guys about this, how would they go about finding out? Where would they go? How would they learn more?
Well, everything is on our website, which is QuantumRE, and that's spelled QuantumRE, QuantumRE. And the RE stands for real estate. We have plans to create an exchange to chop real estate up into tiny pieces. So QuantumRE has all of the contact information, all of the details about how these programs work, how, what they are, how they could work for you. We have a calculator that enables you to find out how much equity you could release. So, everything's there. Even this interview will be posted there so people can, play it over and over again until their heart's content.
All right. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, man. Listen, Matthew, I really appreciate you coming onto this particular podcast. I think you've shared some really cool things about coming into the United States and actually having a different perspective, I think it's a big benefit for entrepreneurs to have this kind of a, outlook on life. And I think that's a huge benefit to be able to grow companies and create companies. And I think if you look at the United States as a land of opportunity, and I still believe to this day, it is a big land of opportunity. I mean, I came here, I remember thinking that money grows on trees here. That was my perception of the United States. And I feel in a way, money does grow on trees here because of the fact that opportunities that we have here in this country.
Yes. You just got to get the right tree, really, haven't you?
Exactly, right? You just got to find the right tree. Yeah. And when you do that, all of a sudden you start going after it and creating things happen and people, become successful. There are so many companies that have been started by first or second or third generation immigrants that have been just unbelievable. And I just love that. So thank you so much for sharing yourself, your successes, your company here on us. For Wonderful. Those of you who are listening to this particular podcast, thank you so much again for listening, because guess what? Without you, I wouldn't be able to do this podcast. I'll be just talking to myself here and Matthew, right? So I really appreciate you. For those listeners, if you found this podcast somewhere out on the internet, remember all the episodes right now, we're at 80 plus episodes of powerful immigrants who came into this country, almost sometimes started from nothing. They're all located at mastersunite.com. That's mastersunite.com. If you find us on iTunes, I'd love for you to leave our review to help us spread this message further and wider to more people. So thank you, Matthew, again for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Peter. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, same here. I'll see you guys on the next episode.